A man unwraps a gift in Tehran. A new smartphone, sleek and expensive, sent by a trusted colleague in Germany. He powers it on, smiles at the crisp display, and begins transferring his contacts. What he doesn't know is that inside that phone, nestled between the battery and the circuit board, sits 15 grams of military-grade plastic explosive. Enough to remove a human head from its shoulders. For the next 6 months, Israeli intelligence will watch him through that device. They will read his messages, hear his whispers, track his movements through 4 countries. They will watch him kiss his daughter goodnight. They will listen as he plans operations that could kill hundreds. And they will wait. Because in the world of modern assassination, patience isn't just a virtue, it's a weapon. On a quiet Tuesday morning in April, while he sits in his private office reviewing classified documents, a signal will travel 2,400 kilometers from a bunker beneath Tel Aviv. The phone will ring once. He will reach for it. And in that fraction of a second between intention and action, Mossad will erase him from existence without leaving a single operative within 1,000 miles of the blast. This is the story of Operation Silent Echo, the longest, most patient assassination in Mossad's modern history. A kill that was planned for years, executed through technology, and designed to send a message that would echo through every intelligence agency on Earth. Nowhere is safe, nothing is private, and the device in your pocket might already be your coffin. His name was Farhad Mohammadi. At least, that's what his Iranian passport said. To the Revolutionary Guard, he was known as the Engineer. To Mossad's Target Acquisition Division, he was designated Crimson Architect. And to the network of operatives, smugglers, and scientists who worked under his command, he was simply Agha, the respectful Persian term for a man of authority. Born in 1971 in Shiraz, Mohammadi showed exceptional promise from childhood. His father, a mid-level bureaucrat in the Shah's government, had saved enough money to send his son to study electrical engineering in France. When the Islamic Revolution swept through Iran in 1979, the family adapted quickly. His father publicly burned photographs of meetings with Western diplomats. His mother began wearing the chador. Young Farhad learned his first lesson in survival. Ideology is a costume. What matters is position. He completed his studies in Lyon, graduating with honors in 1993. His thesis on miniaturized detonation systems caught the attention of Savama, Iran's intelligence service. They recruited him before his diploma was printed. For the next decade, Mohammadi worked in the shadows of Iran's military-industrial complex. He designed triggering mechanisms for missiles. He improved the reliability of improvised explosive devices shipped to Hezbollah. He consulted on projects so classified that even senior Revolutionary Guard commanders didn't know they existed. But here's where the story takes a darker turn. His true value emerged in 2006 when Iran's nuclear program faced its greatest crisis. The Stuxnet virus, a joint American-Israeli cyber weapon, had devastated the centrifuge arrays at Natanz. Thousands of machines spun themselves to destruction. Years of progress vanished in cascading system failures. Iran needed someone who understood both the digital and physical dimensions of warfare. Someone who could rebuild what had been destroyed while protecting against future attacks. Mohammadi became that person. He didn't just repair the damage, he redesigned Iran's entire approach to nuclear security. He created air-gapped systems that couldn't be reached by external networks. He developed protocols for detecting compromised equipment before installation. And most importantly, he established a network of front companies across Europe that could acquire sensitive components without triggering Western sanctions. By 2018, Israeli intelligence estimated that Mohammadi's work had advanced Iran's nuclear timeline by at least 3 years. Every month he remained alive, the threat grew more severe. His elimination was authorized at the highest levels of government. But killing him would prove extraordinarily difficult. Unlike other high-value targets who traveled frequently and maintained predictable patterns, Mohammadi was a ghost. He lived inside a security bubble that made direct assault nearly impossible. His residence in northern Tehran was protected by Revolutionary Guard units. His office was located inside a military compound, surrounded by checkpoints, sensors, and armed patrols. He traveled in armored convoys with rotating routes. He never used the same vehicle twice in a week. He changed phones monthly, always sourcing them through trusted channels that he believed were secure. The traditional methods wouldn't work. No sniper could get close enough. No car bomb could penetrate his security perimeter. No poison meal could reach him without passing through multiple layers of testing. Mossad needed something different. Something that would bypass every physical barrier and strike from within his most intimate space. They needed to turn his trust into a weapon. But wait. This is where the impossible becomes possible. Every fortress has a door, every security system has a gap, and every careful man, no matter how paranoid, has someone he trusts completely. For Farhad Mohammadi, that person was Dr. Klaus Becker. They had met in 1991 during Mohammadi's student years in Lyon. Becker was a visiting professor from Munich, teaching a semester on advanced circuit design. He recognized something in the young Iranian student, a brilliance that went beyond technical competence, a mind that could see connections others missed. They began meeting for coffee after lectures, discussing everything from electromagnetic theory to Persian poetry. By the time Mohammadi returned to Iran, they had become genuine friends. Over the next 27 years, they maintained their relationship through letters, emails, and occasional meetings at international conferences. Becker knew that his friend worked for the Iranian government. He suspected the work involved military applications. But he chose not to ask questions. Their friendship existed in a protected space, separate from the geopolitics that surrounded it. What Becker didn't know was that Israeli intelligence had been monitoring their correspondence since 2003. Every email, every conference registration, every hotel booking was logged and analyzed. Mossad understood that this friendship represented a vulnerability, a channel of absolute trust that could be exploited when the time was right. In September 2018, that time arrived. Dr. Klaus Becker died of a heart attack while hiking in the Bavarian Alps. He was 71 years old. The death was natural, or at least it appeared that way. What the autopsy didn't reveal was the slow-acting compound that had been introduced into his blood pressure medication 3 months earlier, a substance designed to trigger cardiac arrest under physical stress, leaving no detectable trace. Mossad hadn't killed Becker because he was a threat. They killed him because his death created an opportunity, a moment of grief that could be weaponized. 2 weeks after the funeral, a package arrived at Mohammadi's Tehran office. It had been sent from Munich, from an address associated with Becker's estate. Inside was a handwritten letter, supposedly from Becker's widow, explaining that her late husband had always intended to give this gift to his dear friend Farhad. A state-of-the-art smartphone, the latest model, purchased just before his death. The letter was a perfect forgery, written by Mossad's document specialists using samples of the real widow's handwriting obtained through a burglary of her home. The phone was genuine, manufactured by a major electronics company. But during its journey from Germany to Iran, it had spent 72 hours in a Mossad technical facility outside Tel Aviv. What happened during those 72 hours would define the future of targeted assassination. Unit 8200 is Israel's Signals Intelligence Corps, equivalent to America's NSA. But within Unit 8200 exists a smaller division that officially doesn't exist. Known internally as Kapara, Hebrew for atonement, this unit specializes in what intelligence professionals call kinetic cyber operations, the merger of digital infiltration with physical destruction. The team that modified Mohammadi's phone consisted of 7 specialists. 2 were explosive ordnance experts who had spent careers designing weapons small enough to fit inside everyday objects. 3 were software engineers who could rewrite a device's operating system while leaving its surface functionality unchanged. 1 was a materials scientist who understood how to shield electronic components from detection equipment. And 1 was a psychologist who studied human behavior around technology. Their challenge was unprecedented. They needed to insert an explosive charge into a consumer's smartphone without altering its weight, dimensions, or functionality. The device had to pass through Iranian security screening, which included X-ray examination, electronic scanning, and physical inspection. It had to operate normally for an extended period, allowing the target to develop trust in the device. And it had to detonate on command, reliably from thousands of kilometers away. The explosive chosen was PETN, pentaerythritol tetranitrate, one of the most powerful military explosives in existence. 15 grams were molded into a thin sheet and inserted between the phone's battery and rear case. The charge was shaped to direct the blast forward, toward whoever was holding the device. At that range, the effect would be devastating. Now here's the detail that changes everything. The detonator was the true innovation. Traditional remote-triggered explosives used radio signals, but these could be blocked or detected. Instead, Kapara's engineers designed a system that used the phone's own cellular connection. A specific sequence of tones, transmitted during an incoming call, would activate a microcontroller hidden within the phone's circuitry. This controller would send an electrical pulse to a primary detonator made of lead azide. The entire sequence, from signal reception to explosion, would take 0.003 seconds. Faster than human perception. Faster than any possible reaction. But the phone was more than a bomb. It was also a surveillance platform. Modified firmware allowed Mossad to access the camera, microphone, and GPS without any visible indication. They could read every message, monitor every call, and track every movement. The phone would become a window into Mohammadi's entire operational network. The psychological component was equally important. The team understood that people develop emotional attachments to their devices. They customize settings, store photographs, accumulate messages that feel irreplaceable. The longer Mohammadi used the phone, the more dependent he would become, the more he would trust it. The device was tested 14 times using identical phones and simulated conditions. Every test succeeded. On October 3, 2018, the modified phone was sealed in its original packaging, the letter was added, and the parcel was handed to a courier network that would carry it through Vienna, Istanbul, and finally to Tehran. Moving a weapon into Iran is normally impossible. The country's intelligence services maintain vigilant watch over every border crossing, every airport, every shipping route. But Mossad didn't smuggle the device. They delivered it openly, through legitimate postal channels, using Iran's own systems as cover. The package traveled from Munich to Vienna via commercial courier. In Vienna, it was handed to an Iranian diplomatic pouch, mixed with legitimate correspondence being sent to Tehran. Diplomatics. Pouches are protected by international law. They cannot be opened, searched, or detained by foreign authorities. By routing the package through Iran's own diplomatic system, Mossad ensured it would bypass external security entirely. Inside Iran, the package was received by the Foreign Ministry and forwarded through internal mail to Mohammadi's office. It arrived on October 17, 2018. Security protocols required that all packages be scanned before delivery. The phone passed through an X-ray machine operated by Revolutionary Guard technicians. This was the moment of greatest risk. The operators were trained to identify explosives, weapons, and electronic surveillance devices. They saw nothing unusual. The PTN charge had been masked by a thin layer of bismuth, a metallic element that appears similar to standard electronic components on X-ray imaging. The package looked exactly like what it claimed to be. An expensive smartphone sent as a gift from a German professor's widow. At 14:47 local time, the package was delivered to Mohammadi's desk. Mohammadi opened the package that evening, alone in his office. He read the letter twice, his eyes growing wet at the familiar handwriting, the mention of their shared memories, the final kindness from a friend who was no longer alive. He held the phone in his hands, feeling its weight, thinking of Klaus Becker and the decades of friendship that had now ended. Then he powered it on. 3,000 kilometers away, in a basement beneath the Glilot military complex in Tel Aviv, a computer terminal registered the activation. An alert flashed on a monitoring screen. A technician picked up a phone and spoke 2 words: device active. Operation Silent Echo had entered its operational phase, and this is where the operation entered its most disturbing phase. For the next 183 days, Mossad lived inside Farhad Mohammadi's world. They saw what he saw, heard what he heard, tracked every step he took across 4 countries and dozens of facilities. The intelligence gathered was extraordinary. Within the first week, they had identified 47 individuals in Mohammadi's immediate network: engineers, procurement specialists, courier handlers, financial managers. Each name was cross-referenced against existing databases. Each connection was mapped and analyzed. The network spread across Iran, Syria, Lebanon, Germany, and China. They watched him chair meetings where scientists discussed centrifuge configurations. They listened as he negotiated with North Korean technicians over missile guidance systems. They read his messages to Revolutionary Guard commanders, messages that revealed timelines, capabilities, and vulnerabilities that Israeli intelligence had spent years trying to uncover. But they also witnessed his private life, his morning prayers, his phone calls with his daughter studying medicine in Dubai, his late-night conversations with his wife, complaining about bureaucratic obstacles and dreaming of retirement. The surveillance team saw him as a complete human being, not just a target. Some found this disturbing. Others compartmentalized it, focusing on the threat he represented rather than the man he was. In January 2019, Mohammadi traveled to Damascus for a coordination meeting with Hezbollah commanders. The phone recorded every word: names, locations, shipment schedules, payment arrangements. Mossad learned more about Iranian-Hezbollah cooperation in 3 hours than they had gathered in the previous 5 years. In February, he visited a secret facility in Isfahan where advanced centrifuges were being tested. The phone's camera captured images of equipment that analysts had never seen. The footage was shared with American intelligence. Within weeks, new sanctions were imposed on Iranian entities. By April, Mossad had accumulated enough intelligence to disrupt Iranian operations for years. But they faced a decision. The phone's value as a surveillance platform was immense. Every day it remained active, they learned more. But every day also increased the risk of discovery. Eventually, Iranian counterintelligence would notice the anomalies. The order came on April 9, 2019. The surveillance phase was ending. The elimination phase would begin. Target confirmation was scheduled for April 16th, during a window when Mohammadi would be alone in his office, within arm's reach of the device. They had watched him for 183 days. Now they would end him with a phone call that would last less than a second. April 16th, 2019. Tehran. Morning. Farhad Mohammadi woke at 5:30, as he did every day. He performed his prayers, ate breakfast with his wife, and kissed her goodbye. He did not know this would be the last morning of his life. Nothing in his behavior suggested awareness of the end approaching. His driver arrived at 7:15. The armored SUV followed its usual randomized route to the military compound in northern Tehran. Security checks at the gate took 8 minutes. Everything was normal. At 8:47, Mohammadi entered his office. He set his briefcase on the desk, placed his phone beside it, and began reviewing overnight communications. A message from the Isfahan facility. A request from the finance ministry. A report on procurement delays. 3,000 kilometers away, the operations center beneath Glilod was reaching full activity. 12 personnel occupied stations around a central display showing real-time feeds from the target's phone. GPS coordinates confirmed his location. Audio confirmed he was alone. At 9:15, Mohammadi asked his assistant to bring tea. He would be undisturbed for the next hour. She closed the door behind her. The tactical commander in Tel Aviv spoke into his headset. Confirm isolation. Confirmed. Target alone. No additional personnel within 15 meters. Confirm device position. A technician analyzed the phone's accelerometer data. Device stationary on desk surface. Orientation suggests target is seated, facing desk. Confirm authorization. A senior officer typed a code into a secure terminal. A green light appeared. Authorization confirmed. Fire mission approved. The clock showed 9:23:47. In Tehran, Mohammadi reached for his tea. The cup was warm in his hands. He looked at the documents spread before him. A photograph of a centrifuge array. A spreadsheet of projected enrichment timelines. Numbers that represented years of work, decades of planning. His phone rang. The sound was ordinary. The standard ringtone he had selected months ago. He glanced at the screen. No caller ID displayed. Probably a misdialed number. He reached for the phone to decline the call. His fingers touched the screen. In Tel Aviv, the technician transmitted the detonation sequence. 7 tones, each lasting 0.02 seconds, carried through cellular networks spanning continents. The signal reached Tehran in 0.4 seconds. The phone's modified firmware recognized the sequence and activated the microcontroller. A pulse of electricity traveled to the detonator. At 9:24:03 local time, 15 grams of PETN exploded with a force equivalent to 23 grams of TNT. The shaped charge directed the blast forward and upward. The shockwave traveled at 8,000 meters per second. It struck Mohammadi's chest and head before his nervous system could register the phone's vibration. The explosion was heard throughout the compound. Guards rushed toward the source. When they forced open the office door, they found devastation. The desk had been shattered, the windows had blown outward, and Farhad Mohammadi, the man who had advanced Iran's nuclear program by years, no longer existed in any recognizable form. There were no operatives to find. No team had entered Iran. No agent had approached the target. The killing had been executed entirely through technology, from a basement in Tel Aviv, using the target's own trusted device as the murder weapon. Iran's response was immediate and predictable. State television announced that a senior military advisor had been martyred in a terrorist attack. Accusations pointed toward Israel and the United States. Revolutionary Guard commanders vowed revenge. But beyond the public rhetoric, something deeper was happening. Iranian intelligence launched an exhaustive investigation. They traced the phone's journey from Germany through the diplomatic pouch. They identified the connection to Klaus Becker. They discovered that Becker's widow had never sent any package. They realized, with growing horror, that the gift had been designed for murder from the moment it left Munich. The implications were terrifying. If Mossad could turn a smartphone into a remote-controlled bomb, no device was safe. If they could route that bomb through diplomatic channels, no border provided protection. If they could watch a target for 6 months without detection, no security system could guarantee privacy. Within weeks, Iranian officials began abandoning their smartphones. Senior commanders switched to basic phones without cameras or internet connections. Paranoia spread through the security establishment. Every gift was suspect. Every device was potentially hostile. Every communication might be monitored. This was precisely the effect Mossad had intended. The assassination wasn't just about eliminating one man. It was about demonstrating capability, about forcing adversaries to wonder what other devices might be compromised, about creating an atmosphere of fear that would degrade Iranian operational effectiveness for years. The network Mohammadi had built continued without him, though diminished. Other engineers stepped forward. Other coordinators took control of procurement channels. The work continued because the work was larger than any individual. But it was slower now, more careful, more afraid. That fear was the real victory. Not the death of one man, but the paralysis of an entire system. What does Operation Silent Echo reveal about the future of conflict? That the boundaries between cyber warfare and kinetic warfare have dissolved completely. That the devices we carry, the technologies we trust, can be turned against us by adversaries with sufficient capability and patience. That assassination has evolved beyond men with guns into something far more subtle and terrifying. The smartphone in your pocket contains more computational power than the Apollo spacecraft that landed on the moon. It knows your location, your contacts, your communications, your secrets. It sits beside your bed while you sleep. It travels with you everywhere you go. And if the wrong people decide to modify it, that same device can become the instrument of your death. Mohammadi trusted the phone because he trusted Klaus Becker. That trust was real, built over 27 years of friendship. Mossad didn't create the trust. They simply exploited it. They understood that even the most careful, paranoid, security-conscious individual has vulnerabilities. Not in their protocols, but in their humanity. In their need for connection. In their love for friends who send gifts from beyond the grave. This is the darkest lesson of modern intelligence operations. Not that technology is dangerous, but that human relationships can be weaponized. That grief can be manipulated. That the bonds we form across borders, across ideologies, across the divisions that separate us, can become the exact channels through which our enemies strike. The phone rang once in that Tehran office. A fraction of a second later, Farhad Mohammadi ceased to exist. But the echoes of that call continue reverberating through the halls of power, the corridors of intelligence agencies, and the nightmares of anyone who has ever wondered whether the device in their hand might be something more than it appears. Some will argue that Mohammadi deserved his fate, that his work contributed to weapons capable of killing thousands, that his elimination saved lives, prevented wars, protected innocents who would never know how close they came to danger. These arguments have merit. The calculus of counterterrorism is written in hypotheticals and prevented catastrophes that can never be proven, but others will point to the precedent established. If smartphones can be bombs, what about laptops, medical devices, children's toys? If diplomatic pouches can carry weapons, what other systems of international trust can be corrupted? The questions don't have easy answers. If this story made you question the technology around you, hit that subscribe button and tap the notification bell. We go deeper into the operations that governments deny and the methods that reshape global power. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you believe operations like this make us safer, or do they simply escalate the invisible wars being fought in the shadows? Like this video if you want more investigations into the machinery of modern assassination. The next operation is already unfolding somewhere in the world, and you might be carrying its weapon in your pocket right now.